On July 28th, MCP ships the biggest rewrite of its 16-month life. The handshake is gone. The session ID is gone. 3 of the original features are deprecated. And the foundation under 110 million SDK downloads a month is about to get simpler than the day it launched. You do not rip the core out of a protocol at 16 months because everything is going great. So before you look at the changelog, here's the real question. Is this a protocol that earned its dominance and is now cleaning up the mess that comes with moving fast? Or is it a protocol that got adopted before it was ready and is now paying the bill? The answer is both, and the distinction matters if you are building on it. Start with why the rewrite exists. Because the reference script most people are sharing gets this part wrong. The problem was not complexity. The problem was a single architectural decision that made MCP nearly impossible to deploy in production. Original MCP was stateful. Every connection opened with a handshake. The server minted a session ID, and every request after that had to land on the exact machine holding that session in memory. On your laptop, harmless. In a data center, that one decision poisoned everything above it. Load balancers needed sticky sessions. Teams stood up Redis clusters just to store protocol plumbing. API gateways had to crack open JSON bodies to figure out where a request should even go. And serverless was off the table completely, because there was no long-lived process left to do the remembering. MCP was designed for a developer's machine, and the world tried to deploy it to infrastructure that assumes nothing persists. In April, MCP's co-creator stood on a conference stage and said the new transport exists because people running it in production told the team they got parts of it wrong. His words, near enough, they were still humble enough to say they got it wrong and wanted to fix it together. Credit where it is due. Standards usually die defending their mistakes. This one admitted the flaw in public. What they built instead is a wire with no memory. Every request now carries everything the server needs to answer it. Protocol version, client identity, capabilities. Any instance can serve any call. Round-robin load balancing, auto-scaling, and serverless deploys work the way they do for every other web service. That is the whole change, and it is the right one. Multi-step work survives through a trick as old as the signed cookie. When a server needs to hold state across calls, it hands back a sealed blob of its own state. The client collects it and echoes it back on the next request. Whichever replica catches it picks up where the last one stopped. The state made a round trip through the client and came home. Now the part the announcement does not say out loud. The state management did not vanish. It moved. If your server tracked anything across calls, an open transaction, a live browser session, a file handle, that is now an explicit handle your tools mint and your storage keeps alive. And the courier for that handle is a language model. A non-deterministic text generator that can drop or mangle an ID for any reason it likes. A handle is also a key. Accept one back without verifying. It belongs to the caller, and you have handed out a textbook authorization hole. At MCP's own conference, a vendor was already on stage selling a state sidecar to hold everything the protocol just evicted. That is not a criticism of the decision. Stateless was the right call, but the complexity did not disappear. It just became your problem instead of the protocols. So here is what that actually means if you build servers. If your tools are pure functions, a weather lookup, a database read, a calculation, you gain everything and lose nothing. Deploy them serverless, scale them to 0. Forget they exist. But the moment your server holds something live, a transaction mid-flight, a paginated cursor, a login session, you now own 3 jobs. You mint the handle, you store what it points to, and you check that the caller is allowed to use it every time it comes back. Skip that last one, and a helpful language model will happily replay another user's handle straight into your data. The rewrite did not make servers simpler. It made simple servers trivial and stateful servers your full responsibility. Now, the part that actually matters more than the transport rewrite, and the part the viral posts are not covering. Ask server authors what their main issues with MCP are. Sessions barely make the list. Authorization tops it every single time. Every major client implements MCP auth its own way. Anthropic's API wants you to bring your own bearer token. Claude.ai insists on running the full OAuth flow itself. ChatGPT rejects machine-to-machine credentials. Google Cloud requires them. VS Code still speaks a spec revision from over a year ago. Build a server against one client and it can fail silently in the next one. MCP mandates OAuth 2.1. OAuth 2.1 has never been finished. It is still a draft at the standards body, years in. A protocol rewriting its foundation while standing on a standard that was never ratified. July's release does harden authorization. 6 separate proposals worth of hardening. But hardening and unifying are different jobs. And the thing developers complain about most walks out of this release alive. The auth fragmentation across clients is not fixed. It is better documented. To be fair, the readiness numbers are genuinely alarming. 2 weeks before the release, an engineer probed every reachable remote server in the official MCP registry to see who could speak the new spec. 4,356 servers answered. The number ready for July 28th was 1. 1 server out of 4,000. The flagship protocol of the AI era is rewriting its foundation, and the ecosystem standing on it has not shown up yet. But the download curve tells a different story. React needed 3 years to reach the SDK adoption base. MCP hit in 16 months. The loudest deployments were never on social media to begin with. Behind corporate firewalls, MCP is wired into Salesforce, Jira, Snowflake, and HR systems all day long. The co-creator calls it the biggest deployment surface the protocol has. You will never see it trending, but it is where the real usage lives. The context bloat complaint that went around earlier this year is worth addressing too, because it was real, and it was aimed at the wrong layer. Claude Code once burned 22% of a 200,000 token window on tool definitions nobody had asked for yet. The fix was loading tools on demand inside the client. The protocol never changed, and the problem left. That is not a defense of MCP. It is a reminder that the protocol is one layer in a stack, and blaming it for every problem in the stack is lazy analysis. Even the developers who dropped MCP for skills and CLI tools are running a play straight off MCP's own roadmap. Let the model write code and let that code call the tools. That is not a rejection of the protocol's goals. It is a different implementation of the same idea. If you maintain a server and you are bracing for the 28th, the practical checklist is short. Stop string matching error code -32002 because it becomes -32602. Make sure your proxy passes the new MCP routing headers instead of stripping them. Send a strict JSON content type. Old versions keep negotiating, and deprecated features get a 12-month floor. For most servers running today, this is not an emergency. So here's the honest red. MCP is not losing. Every major platform vendor sits on the same foundation. The download curve is still climbing, and no rival standard is shipping anything today. But the 1 out of 4,000 readiness number is the real test. That is the before picture. Check back in 6 months and see whether the ecosystem caught up or whether the gap widened. The auth story is the longer bet. If the clients converge on a single implementation over the next year, MCP becomes the durable standard it is trying to be. If they keep forking per client, the fragmentation becomes the story, and the transport rewrite becomes a footnote. MCP made itself dumber on purpose. Dumber survives longer. Whether the ecosystem shows up in time to find out is the only question left, and I will see you in the next one.